So which are the best colors for a Porsche Cayenne? Now I'm considering this because I'm looking at replacing my current Porsche Cayenne, which is purple, with another car. Now I've had to consider which colors I might go with. So I'm going to try to explain why I think base white, which you might see behind me, or perhaps one of the special metallic colors with a two-tone interior might be the best way to go. Now I've covered this before in a very long video, which was kind of laborious and probably no one watched, so I'm going to try to cover it again. Now, before we get there, it would be great if you click the like and subscribe buttons. And if you have any thoughts on which color is best, drop those in the comments below. So with that in mind, let's leap into the car configurator and get to it and look at which color options we have and which ones I think are going to be the best options, particularly focusing on resale value. Okay, so when we're looking at these colors, we have a few options. Now we can basically go with standard colors, which are going to be things like white and black. We have the metallic colors, which cost a little bit more, in Australian dollars around $2,300 more, and then we have special colors, which are going to be around $5,000 more in Australian dollars. Now, all of these numbers are going to be in AUD. The same basic logic applies whichever currency you're looking at. Basically, the more special colors are going to cost you more money. That's basically how it works. Now, you'll notice that with the base Cayenne, there isn't really a paint to sample option, but that will cost a lot more if it were available, and you wouldn't really want to go with it for this type of car anyway, because you won't make your money back on it, because it isn't that much of a special car. All right, so let's have a look at which of our options we can go with. So if we're going through these, we've got a few different types of options. So we have our base white, which looks quite okay. Now the base white is relatively standard, there's nothing wrong with it, it's relatively benign. Then we have the black color, which also looks okay as well. Now, reportedly, there are issues with the black colors for Porsches, in that they tend to attract damage and look dirty very easily, as is the case with a lot of black cars. The Porsche black reportedly is a little bit more difficult to care for than other blacks. So I've had a black Porsche Cayenne black edition before. The black for it wasn't too bad, I found, but it did pick up stone chips. By contrast, I currently also have a black Lamborghini Gallardo. Its black holds up much better. So there does seem to be an issue with the Porsche black, but nevertheless, it is an option. So those are our two base colors. Therefore, if you're going with the base free color, you're probably better off going with the white color because it will be easier to care for. Now, the next ones are metallic colors. Now, in terms of the metallic colors, they'll cost about 2,300 Australian dollars more. Now, I've got a few that are not really worth the effort. One is metallic white, which looks so similar to base white, it won't be worth the time. In addition to that, we have a metallic black. Now, if you really want a black car, this would be the better option to go with. But it costs more, it looks so similar to base black that you won't make your money back in resale. Because basically people are going to see black car, they're not really going to see black metallic, it won't look that different. Then we have a silver color. Now, I would advise against the silver color personally, because you've got three boring colors, white, black, and silver. Those are kind of standard boring colors that cars typically are in. Silver falls into that boring color category. So therefore, resale-wise, you wouldn't expect to get much more for silver versus white or black. So it won't necessarily be the best use of money. We then have blue metallic, which I personally don't mind. It's $2,300 more. I'll go over whether you would want to get this in a second when we look at two-tone leather. But if I were to go with this option, I'd probably also add the slightly optioned two-tone interior. It is, however, quite a nice looking color. And you can kind of see when you're rotating around the car here that the blue looks quite nice. And in reality, it does also look a little bit better than it does in the car configurator pictures. So the blue is a decent option. The next one is mahogany. Now, the mahogany color is, again, personal preference. I'd probably not go with this one because it might date a little bit worse than the blue. It's a little bit more polarizing. When you go to list it for sale, it's basically going to be listed as brown, which isn't necessarily the first color people are going to go with. So therefore, I wouldn't necessarily go with it. It's not a bad color per se, and it looks quite nice in reality, but you effectively have that uphill battle when you're selling it of convincing people that brown is a good color. Then we also have this sort of grayish metallic. Again, it looks okay, but it falls into that boring category color, as I mentioned before. So I'd probably avoid this one myself, focusing purely on resale. From all of those metallic type colors, I regard blue as probably the best option there, because it's going to be the least polarizing, it looks a little bit more interesting than the three boring colors I mentioned, and it isn't that much more expensive. So those are so far our two options, white and blue, to my mind, in terms of resale. Now, if we go down to the special colors, I regard these as not really being worth the money in general terms. Now, I've got two that I definitely wouldn't go with, which are effectively our beige metallic, and beige is not an exciting color. It looks a little bit different from white, but personally, I think it looks kind of dated and old. So if you're looking at selling the car, it's going to be listed as effectively white. So it's not going to look that different. I don't regard it as likely that people would pay you $5,000 more or even much more in resale for having beige metallic, i.e. you're probably going to be better off resale-wise just going with white. It also doesn't look that much more special than white as to make it worthwhile. I'd regard that as being similar with crayon. Now, crayon looks really nice in reality. Now, the pictures don't really do it justice. I quite like it, but again, it's a little bit polarizing to some extent. It effectively looks kind of like this whitish gray in reality. So it's quite nice, but again, it's $5,000 more. It won't really look that different resale-wise. It might help to get you across the line over base white, but again, it's not really going to be that much of a difference. Then we have the lava. Now, lava, again, is a little bit polarizing, as I've indicated with, say, mahogany. Now, the advantage of lava is it looks special. It looks quite nice in reality to my mind. However, I know that some people regard the lava as a little bit too over the top for an SUV like this. So it will deter some buyers, but by contrast, with other buyers, it's going to be the thing that gets you across the line. It probably won't get $5,000 more in terms of resale, but it will help to get a sale done when you've got your car compared to another one that is similar. Put differently, I regard it as helping the sale process, but not necessarily helping it so much that it's necessarily worth the extra money. So if I were to go with the special colors, I'd go with lava. But personally, I wouldn't spend the extra money because I wouldn't expect to make it up in resale. So that's what I'd go with colors. Basically, I'd go with the two options of either A, the white here, or I'd go with the blue. Those are effectively the two choices. Now, with white, I'd go with basically the standard interior. With blue, I'd go with two-tone. So let's scroll down and have a look at those interiors and sort of see what options we can go with. So I'll select the base white to begin with, but I'll go back to blue in a second. Now, before we get to those interiors, we can look at wheel options. Wheel options are kind of color related. They don't really make that much difference to my mind. Personally, I'd keep the base wheels for really two reasons. One, I actually quite like how the base wheels look. Two, in resale, you won't really get much more money for bigger wheels, particularly for a car like this. So this isn't really like a 911 or another type of sports car where you'd get more for bigger wheels maybe. Here, it just won't make much difference. So I don't think that people who are in the SUV market, particularly the used Cayenne market, are really saying, well, I really need 21-inch versus 20-inch or whatever. I don't think will make that much difference. And if you look at the actual things for sale, you'll see that, where the cars aren't going to sell for that much different based on the wheels. I also think the base wheels look quite nice, particularly when you compare it to, say, upgrades like the Cayenne S wheels, which I don't think look any better. I actually really like the base wheels. Now, you could slightly upgrade them to being black, but that's going to cost a lot more. So in Australia, that's going to cost about $12,000 more for that upgrade. I personally wouldn't go with that. No one is going to pay you $12,000 more in resale for doing that. If you really want black wheels, you can probably get an aftermarket shop to paint them black for you. So in reality, you can probably find other ways to achieve this. So I'm going to go with the base wheels here. Now, that would be my best solution in a resale perspective. Now, we can scroll down to various things like interior. Now, I'm going to skip the wheel accessories. The only real accessory that is cosmetic is going to be the color centers. Now, this is really just a minor issue. We certainly will not make this back up in resale. So the color centers look kind of nice, but what you can basically see here is all it does is it basically changes the center of the wheel to being the color Porsche logo. I'll be honest, when I bought my car used, I didn't even really notice this. Now, admittedly, that is a little bit ignorant when I was buying it, but it wasn't even something that I paid attention to. So it's not really going to help you that much. So I would just leave it blank and not bother selecting it. But again, personal preference, if you really want color center wheels, then certainly you can go ahead with it. But I wouldn't. So I'm going to deselect that for the moment. Now we can scroll down and look at the interior. Now in terms of the interior, if you're going with base white, I'd stick with the black interior. Now you've got a few ordinary options. The two no-cost ones are the black and the grey. Now, both of these are so similar as to be almost indistinguishable. So to be honest, it won't make that much difference. I'd personally go with black because it will be a little bit easier to care for. The other kind of standard option is still an extra charge, but it isn't that much. It's only 750 Australian dollars, so it's not expensive. And that's the two-tone interior. Now, I'd take that two-tone interior if I were going with the blue car. The reason I'd say that is if we scroll through the pictures here and we get effectively back to the dashboard, the two-tone interior does actually look quite nice. So you can kind of see it has some differentiation around here, around here. It does actually look quite pleasant. It creates a bit of differentiation. In a used car perspective, you won't necessarily get the money back, but it will make the car more attractive than another car. Now, I don't regard this kind of beigey tan interior as going that well with the white. But if you compare it to, say, the blue metallic, it would go quite nicely with a blue metallic car. It would create quite a nice contrast there. And in a second, I'll show what that would look like after I go through the other color options. So I'll just clear the drawings for the second. Now, what we can also look at is the other options here. Now, in terms of the other options, we've got a few. We also have a full black leather interior. Now, if I click this button, what you can see is it doesn't really make that much difference. It really looks so similar that in the used car market, it will make no tangible difference to resale. Basically none. It's $7,000 more. I wouldn't bother with it. Similarly with any of these other full leather options that cost a lot more. Now, in terms of the red option, that's also super expensive at about 8,000 Australian dollars. I would personally avoid this for two reasons. A, it's $8,000 in Australian dollars, so a little bit less than the US. B, red interiors are polarizing. I know that some people really love them, but I personally quite dislike red interiors. So I would personally prefer not to have this and just have a black interior. Now, again, personal preference, but it costs a lot more. I wouldn't really go with it. Then you have these other two-tone interiors that cost more than the base one, but look so similar that you can't really tell the difference. Now, obviously, we're looking at this in the car configurator, but these look so similar that it's not really worth the extra money. You might as well just go with the cheap option. Now, in terms of the full leather interior ones here, where it's sort of custom leather, these are so expensive that they're not really worth it and don't look that much better. Now, a brown interior, to my mind, looks kind of old. So I would personally rather actually avoid that. I wouldn't pay the money for it. So with that in mind, I basically just stick with the base black and the base two-tone. Now, I said before the base two-tone can look quite nice with the blue. So if we just change our car color to blue in a second, we can see how that looks when we kind of scroll through the pictures. Admittedly, this is an illustration in the configurator, but it does look quite nice when you're scrolling through. It creates a bit of differentiation. It will help in resale to some extent. So I don't regard it as a bad option per se. Now, when you add that to the paint, you're looking at about $3,000 in options for colors, which isn't the biggest expense in the grand scheme of things, particularly when you're looking at Porsche options. Now, if you're going with a white car, you can also look at other cosmetic options, such as decals on the side of the car. Now, these decals, to some extent, are a bit of a waste of money. Some of them look better than others. One that you might consider is getting the Porsche logo pushed along the side. So if we look at these exterior options here, we can get the Porsche logo put along the side. So we've got roof rails, etc., but I'm mainly looking at the cosmetic options. So in terms of the cosmetic options, effectively what we can have here is if we scroll down, we can see the Porsche logo along the side here. Now, we've got a few options. We can have it done in black, we can have it done in silver, or we can have it done in red. Now, if we have it done in red, the red is going to look actually a little bit better. So if we have a look at the red looks like quite a decent contrast against the white. So as such, that wouldn't be a terrible option to go with. It creates a bit of differentiation. It might help get the car across the line with buyers if they really want a red interior or really want a bit of differentiation. Now, in terms of the other cosmetic options, there are some other cosmetic options. Basically, those are going to come down to sport design packages, i.e. carbon, etc. Most of those are totally pointless. Now, I'm not going to go through them all in detail because they get a little bit repetitive and they're all very similar in nature. But if we go to some of these options, so for example, carbon design package. Now, this helps to illustrate why these aren't worth the money. Now, if we scroll through these pictures, I'd hazard a guess that most people can't really tell the difference. Now, this is both the case in person and also in these pictures, where the car looks basically the same, just with some carbon accents here and there. So, i.e. carbon accents in the mirrors, carbon accents in the front grille, i.e. there's a little bit of a difference. So this difference is basically coming in around here, which isn't really worth the money to my mind, particularly when we're looking at a cost in the vicinity of $12,000 to get this done. So it isn't really worth the money. As such, I'd stick with those two base options. I'd either go base white, maybe with the red Porsche logo, which I know that some people think is naff, but still it can create a bit of differentiation, particularly for non-Porsche buyers who wanted to look a little bit unique. And there's only an $870 option for that red Porsche logo. Or I'd go with blue metallic and the two-tone interior, which is going to be approximately $3,000 all up for those options. So not particularly expensive. And while one won't necessarily get all of that back in the used car market, it will help to get a sale across the line. All right, so those are my thoughts on the best colors to go for the Porsche Cayenne. Well, I think the base white is actually a good option with a black interior, and that's a minimally expensive one. And then you might add on an $870 Porsche logo, which I know some people regard as naff, but still it might help to create a bit of differentiation against all the other boring white cars. Or alternatively, going with the blue metallic with two-tone interior, which would cost $3,000 in total, which is actually not a bad use of money to create a bit of differentiation. You might also go with some other cosmetic options, like those center wheel hubs in color. However, I would skip most of them, particularly skipping things like the carbon package, which they have very limited performance benefit given the car is so heavy, and basically you can't tell that they're even there. And they're super expensive for what they are, and you probably would not make that money back. So thanks again for tuning in. I hope this video has been useful to you. I hope it's given you some insight into the options I'd regard as useful when it comes down to resale value and how I'd go about configuring the car. So it would be great if you click the like and subscribe buttons. And if you have any thoughts about which color options are the best, drop those in the comments below. So thanks again for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.